Today, we're diving into a really powerful and, honestly, a deeply personal story of courage. We're talking about the very first documented birth of a Black child in Japan. This is a story about what it means to be a real pioneer. But before we get deep into her story, let's start with a question. Think about it for a second. What does it actually take to be a pioneer? It's so much more than just being the first to do something. It's about resilience, it's about courage, and it's about being willing to step into the complete unknown. Keep that idea in your head as we go through this incredible journey.
All right, so our story starts with a journey to, well, a world away. It's about a young woman who moves to a country that, especially back then, was one of the most culturally uniform nations on the entire planet.
To really get a feel for the setting, you have to understand the numbers. At the time she arrived, the foreign-born population in Japan was less than 1%. Think about that. This wasn't just moving to a new country. This was stepping into a place where seeing a non-Japanese face, let alone a Black face, was an incredibly rare thing. And this context is absolutely key to understanding a crucial concept: Japan as a homogeneous society. What that means is that pretty much everything, social norms, systems, even healthcare, was all built around a single shared cultural experience. For anybody coming from the outside, that reality creates some really unique challenges. And you can just feel what that must have been like, right? This mix of emotions. On one hand, the absolute thrill of discovery, but on the other, this profound sense of being an outsider. That line, "I saw only my own reflection," wow, that just perfectly captures that feeling of being totally fascinated by a new world, but also completely isolated within it. So how did she even find herself on this path? Let's take a look at the steps that led her from her home right to the edge of making history. Her journey really unfolded in 3 huge steps. First, there was the massive decision to start a whole new life overseas. Then, of course, came the journey itself, the huge physical and emotional move to Japan. And finally, the discovery that would change everything. She was pregnant, a whole world away from everyone and everything she had ever known. And that discovery, that's where her journey went from challenging to completely uncharted. I mean, navigating a pregnancy is a big deal for anyone, anywhere. But doing it in this specific situation, as a Black woman in a country that had zero precedent for it, that was something else entirely. The hurdles she faced were just immense. She had to try and communicate really complex medical needs across a huge language barrier. She had to deal with cultural misunderstandings about something as personal as health. She had to figure out a totally foreign medical system from square one, and she had to do it all while feeling deeply, profoundly alone.
And this just created such a stark contrast. The universal expectation for an expecting mother is support, community, and familiarity. Her reality, it was the exact opposite. She was basically forging a path in total darkness, with no map to guide her and no one who had ever walked it before.
All of this, the journey, the challenges, the isolation, it all led to this single moment of truth. The point where her personal struggle and this huge historical significance were about to collide. So after months of navigating all of this, the day arrived. And against all odds, she was about to do something no one like her had ever done before in that country. In that moment, in that unfamiliar hospital room, you have to imagine there was fear. A deep fear of the unknown, for herself and for the new life she was just about to bring into the world. But that fear was met with an incredible strength, a surge of hope for the future, for this brand new life she was fighting for. And then it happened. A healthy baby was born. A new life began. And with that birth, a quiet but new chapter in the history of a nation began too. Let's go back to that word we started with, a pioneer, the first person to do something new. In that one moment, both the mother and her child became pioneers, literally embodying the very definition of that word. So why does this one birth matter so much all these years later? Well, because it wasn't just a single event. It created a lasting legacy. Because this was never just about one family. This birth was a milestone. It was a crack in the monolith of a homogeneous society. A quiet but really profound moment of change. The legacy here is huge. This birth broke a cultural barrier, and it planted a seed for a more diverse future. It's become this enduring symbol of a mother's courage and strength. And maybe most importantly, it started a long, slow conversation that's still going on today. A conversation that challenges and expands the very definition of what it even means to be Japanese. And in the end, that's the impact of any pioneer. Every single first opens a door that used to be locked. This mother pushed that door open with nothing but her own will and resilience. And that just leaves us with one last question to think about. Who will be inspired by her story to walk through the next one?